it drill. I'm independent, I don't need no deal. I'm jaws on the beat, I got flow that kills. Do my thing with a few G's, Lauren Hill.
What's up guys, it's Unders. In this video, I'm going to show you how I use Native Instruments Monark Synth to create that kind of rolling, moving Reese that I use to fill up all of the low end in my tracks. Here's this sound just here. I just use that to fill up a lot of weight. So this track is pretty much completely unmixed, but I'll just have a quick listen. If we have this muted, there's kind of no bottom end, there's no big weight to the track. Just put this guy in and it helps everything sit on. It kind of gives a foundation. Cool, and I'm just going to show you pretty much how I use Monark to make that and give it that kind of natural moving feel and the warmness. Alright, so an initialized Monark just loads up with basically all three oscillators smashed on three different wave types at different intervals, giving us this. Which is a nice big fat sound, sounds really cool. But one of the first things that we need to do is look at our filter. We're going to take off lots of the high end and we want some resonance in our filter just to make it kind of this warm low end thing for everything to sit on. Now, the filter itself at the minute is always going to be set to MM. It's not exactly what we're after. So what we want to do is just swap it to the low pass. That's closer straight away. Now for this particular type, we're also going to switch the polarity on the contour. So we just want that to switch from plus to the minus like that. And the contour we're actually going to bring all the way open like this. That starts to give us that warmer sound, right? Going to bring the resonance up just a touch. Starts to get a bit harsher. And I'll bring the cutoff down. That's where we're starting to get that bit of movement from. The waveforms and range that we choose can vary. Generally, what I'm going to do is not use the third one. So I'll be turning that off entirely just by taking the volume out like that. And the reason is I'm going to be using oscillator 3 as a modulator for the cutoff filter. Now oscillator 1 and 2, we can vary, but I quite like the saw and triangle wave. I find those a lot warmer. So let's set up that cutoff filter so it automatically wobbles. If we have a look over here in the modulation section, in the minute it says OS3, and that's actually what we want. And what we need is this wheel is going to push up and we're going to switch the mod switch on here. And when we push that up, which is our modulation wheel on our keyboard, that is going to help us modulate the cutoff filter. So we need to create some modulation for that to work, and I do that inside Logic or the DAW, or we can just find a place that we like where it's got the wobble and just leave it there. And it's always going to wobble for us. Now to set the speed of it, we need to go to oscillator 3 and choose its frequency. If you stick it dead center, it's going to be in line with the key that you're playing, assuming we have key tracking on. That's one of the ways we can get a nice Reese feel, because it always modulates depending on the key that we're touching. I find it quite nice if we put it just ever so slightly off frequency as well. Now the other thing now is you're probably noticing that it triggers each time. And whenever I do my reeses, I have them so they always slide into each note. All of that is over here on the tuning side of things. So we've got the glide type of the MM and silver, and then below it we've got basically the trigger as always or legato. And well, what we will do is we want that on legato. But it's still triggering. So we need to switch from MM to silver. We're still getting a bit of a trigger, so we're going to take the glide time up. And they're wobbling into each other quite nicely. Now the rest of this really comes into the attack, decay, etc. of the filter envelope and the patch itself. We're just going to adjust the filter envelope slightly. We can play with these a little bit more by flipping over Monark. Now, depending on how you're doing it, you can either right click and do view being at the back, or if you're like me on complete control using a keyboard, you can just use this control here just to flip it over. You got your pitch bend curve here. You can adjust the curve. So we can have a really linear pitch bend curve. Yeah, the pitch bend curve is going to affect your pitch wheel here if you decide to do ramp ups. But also we've got the keyboard legato in here. And we can choose the note priority. So last is going to be best for this. We always want the last note to have the priority in the voicing. But the glide ramp, we can maybe switch to free run. It might give us more of the performance we're after. An envelope trigger in on or off, we might want to put it on never. It never re-triggers the envelope after the first hit, so we never get that clunk. Just always moves into the next note. Doesn't re-trigger the envelope. Depends what works best for you. There's a couple of other touches we can do. We can do things like the load, which really does help distort the sound, thicken it up a lot. I tend to have noise on as well. And I'll opt for usually the pink noise. Just the tiniest touch of that in there, just to grit it up a bit. White noise might work better. Depends what you're after. I tend to opt for the pink, a little bit darker for this type of tone. Literally, you can just get it in just the tiniest little bit, just to dirty up the sound a bit. Yeah, we can play with that modulation wheel, and what we can do is effectively record that in. So let's just go on the DAW here. We'll just go to this channel. Let's just do touch, and we can just record in some modulation for that modulation wheel just to add more of that wobble in. And just having that recording is going to let us ever so slightly adjust that modulation and how much of it's going on. The other thing we can do is modulate oscillator 3, and that's going to let us change how fast it moves as well. Let's put that back into touch. So now we've got the amount coming in and out, and then how fast it's going to modulate. That's what gives it loads of character when it's sat under the track. So a couple of other things that I'll do are going to be outside of Monark. One is I send it to something that's generally called the wide aux. So here it is without. And to understand what I do with that wide aux and how that works, I'll link to another video of explaining that wide mixing that keeps everything in mono as well. And then depending on the mix, I'll either say put something like Saturn on and distort the mid-range. So we can just drag that over. So it's a multi-band distortion, just distorting the mid. So it goes like this. It's got a much harsher tone here. That just helps it stick out a bit more in the mix. Fab filter is literally giving it another boost up here and cutting out some extreme lows that we don't need. The Moog, for example, here does emulate really, really low. Got the API on here, could be pretty much any compressor. Compressing relatively hard, but quite snappy. It just works really well with the pulsing effect, so it helps it stick out a little bit. Check it out. Kind of adds a transient to that pulse. And then last thing is just a compressor set up to the kick. And then there it is. It's the basis for all of your Reese sound in your D&B track. And that is essentially it, guys. That's how I'm using Monark to make those classic Reese sounds and get that kind of analog feel where it wobbles in and out and the frequencies change and it maintains that wobble with the keys you're playing. Really, really simple to do. A great synth. If you've got it as part of Complete, you should absolutely be using it. Anyone who owns a machine got given it for free a few years back. So well worth diving into. Use it loads pretty much for all my basses. Hope the video was helpful for you guys, and I will see you on the next one.